SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
Second Amendment Outdoors in Corinth, America's largest online firearms and accessory mall, has the best deals for you to stay loaded and ready, as well as covered head to toe in all the best brands. Whatever the season, whatever your game, our focus is all in the name. SecondAmendmentOutdoors.com, where freedom meets the field.
This is Gerard Gibert, and thank you for listening to MidDays here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C Spire. Power your home or business with C Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C Spire. C Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. Hello. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this
Friday Eve.
Man, oh man, working right on through the final month of 2025 as Christmas is inching ever closer, and it's going to get cold this weekend across the Magnolia State, right? I think it's going to be rather wintry-like. But we're ready for it because it's that time of year, and we're approaching the shortest day of the year as well. And you can tell that because, man, when it gets dark, it comes in a hurry around 5 o'clock around these parts. Time magazine, you know it's the end of the year because Time has named their Person of the Year. And it turns out that it's the creators of artificial intelligence, the architects of AI, as they label it, that on the front, a couple of different covers they've produced, as they typically do, of their magazine. And they're paying homage, shall we say, to these folks that are really just blazing new trails, innovators. They found that AIs can scheme, this is what they say, deceive or blackmail, so that's a cause for concern, as is the case with any novel technology, any new innovation. Always there's a risk component. But there are a whole bunch of benefits as well. And there's probably, Rhino, a lot of people out there listening, watching right now that think, I don't really use that AI. But you do. You do. And here's what I mean by that. It may not be directly. You may not be going into ChatGPT or Grok or Gemini or any of the old other generational pre-trained transformer platforms. I think I got that right. Why they make that so dang complicated? I don't know why they came up with that, but I just about got it.
That's why they shortened it.
Right, to GPT, right? Most people just say that, don't know what it means. But that's what it means in case you're interested. It's some worthless trivia, I guess. But they say, well, I don't use those tools. I don't go in and enter prompts to produce content in return, which could come in the form of text or imagery or a number of other output options. But behind the scenes, much of what you use in your daily life, it's powered by AI. There's some AI component to it. So I was reading this morning about the power of agentic AI. And this is kind of something we were doing in the IT world for a long time, but it really wasn't AI powered. we called it workflow rules, workflow processing. And you could literally develop code within software to tell, or not within software, but the parameters that were used to set up, control the software to tell it what to do in certain circumstances. If all these conditions are met, do this. And an example I heard this morning had to do with, let's say you're flying on an airplane. A lot of people out there listening fly on airplanes. And those GE engines, those big, giant jet engines that power commercial aircraft, they've got fan blades in them. And you've always got to be conscious of a blade breaking, fracturing, in need of repair. And now you've got sensors that'll figure out when that happens. I mean, it used to be just manual inspection. Now you've got sensors that will determine in advance of it becoming a safety problem, a serious problem, if that's going on. This is just one little bitty example, by the way. And so what it'll do is notify through agents the ground folks that are responsible, the maintenance crews, for repairing and maintaining those aircraft. And it'll create the various service tickets in their systems and then assign those out to the properly trained technicians to take care of that work without any human intervention. And if there's parts needed, it'll go order the parts. And it'll just continue on automating the process all down the line. So that's just one little bitty example. We say, well, I don't use AI. Well, if you flew on the airplane, you actually did in that respect to some extent. Not directly, just indirectly. The point I'm making is that this is really permeating throughout society, everything we do. And that's a good thing. It's making us more productive. Now, the president, as part of his barnstorming tour, where he's discussing the economy and more specifically trying to get ahead of the Democrats on this affordability narrative, he talked yesterday about his commitment to ensuring that this country remains the leader in artificial intelligence. And he also talked about all the other requirements for that, if you will. He understands we got to have sufficient power and infrastructure and talent, technical talent, and we've got to have a reasonable regulatory environment and framework as well that protects people, but also doesn't impede innovation. And he and I'm quoting him here, he says, we're leading China by a lot. You know, he likes to say that, the word a lot. And so that's what he said yesterday. We're leading China by a lot in that regard. So that's good. That's good stuff. And I'm glad to see the president recognizes that this is essential to our national security. It's essential to future economic posterity. So good stuff there. Just wanted to pass that on. The House yesterday, by the way, passed a $901 billion annual defense bill. Now, I think that's up about $50 billion, if I'm not mistaken. That's the bill that funds the defense portion of the discretionary function of government for a year in this particular case. And so that has been transmitted to the Senate. I can't remember, Rhino, what specifically that procession looks like in the Rhino world there for bills that get moved about in the U.S. Capitol.
Oh, it's jetpacks and dudes on stilts wearing Uncle Sam costumes and lots of roller skates. Not roller blades, although you would think with how behind the times D.C. is, it'd be rollerblades. But
That's right.
It's roller skates.
I got you. So this thing's headed to the Senate. This, by the way, was $8 billion more than the White House requested, $24 billion less than the Senate's version of the bill. So think about that. We had kind of three versions of this Defense Authorization Act, the House, the Senate, and the White House. And really, though, they're not too terribly far apart when you consider it's almost $1 trillion. I know you've brought this up before, and I'm with you. Shouldn't they have to prove where all the money we already sent went before we send them more? That's still kind of aggravating, isn't it? A core function of government, in my view, is unable to produce all the assets associated with the expenditures in the money that the taxpayers provided to them.
And it would be completely different if some chief of staff or some multi-star general sat in front of a public hearing in Congress and said, look, I can't discuss openly where this was spent, but I can tell you in a classified meeting. We don't even get that. They go, where'd this money go? And you go, I don't know.
I know. So
we can't find it.
And that's exactly what they say. By the way, just looking it up, for fiscal year 2025, $883 billion. So it's up as a result by $18 billion. $18 billion. By the way, that's about half of what we send to foreign countries. Just pull all that back to offset it. That's what we talked about yesterday, like with the farm bill and so forth. Man, let's be a little smarter about the way we spend the taxpayer money. We're coming right back. Robyn Tannehill, the mayor of Oxford, at 11:05. Rickey Cole, former chair of the Mississippi Democratic Party, at 12:05. This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Middays with Gerard.
Good for America. Good for fans of justice and truth. Good for us.
SuperTalk Mississippi.
This is what we stand for.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays. A little Hall & Oates bumping us into this segment. Appreciate that, Rhino. Once again, we're in the Element Wealth studio. Go to myelementwealth.com or call 601-957-6006 to let Element Wealth help you find your balance between income, growth, and guarantees. I know a lot of folks, as we approach the end of the year, are thinking about planning for retirement. You need a plan. That's why you need to call Element Wealth. The C Spire text line is wide open, 601-879-4395. And today at 1 p.m. on In a Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar, you'll hear from former Ole Miss administrator Sparky Reardon and publisher Neil White as they talk about Sparky's new book, The Dean, Memoirs and Missives. So Sparky was I believe, the Dean of Students, if I'm not mistaken, Rhino, when I was in school. And he's a blast. That'll be a great interview. And Neil White is a fraternity brother. And, you know, we have the books out here at Rhino, Mississippians, that you've seen in our green room. Neil's the publisher. He's the creator of that. He's a couple of years younger than me. I was actually the pledge trainer when he was a pledge in the old fraternity days. Neil's a very talented author, writer as well. So that'll be an interesting conversation today, 1 o'clock. Steve Azar. Now, this vote on the National Defense Authorization Act, it was 312 to 112. 18 Republicans and 14 Democrats voted no on the bill authorizing this $901 billion in War Department. Remember, we don't call it the Department of Defense anymore. The president changed it to the Department of War. So I wonder, Rhino, if we need to rename the bill itself. Maybe instead of the National Defense Authorization Act, it needs to be the National War Authorization Act. That would freak some people out, probably. How about the National War Department Authorization Act? Little qualification there. To a little noun qualification to clarify what that's all about. But, yep, that's where we are on that.
It would just get even more confusing trying to listen to Democrats talk about it because they refuse to call Hegseth Secretary of War.
That's true. Oh, my gosh. They're just like in permanent aggrieve mode, aren't they? So I made a comment yesterday on my social media platform about the president's barnstorming tour and his air of optimism about 2026 with the big, beautiful bill, tax provisions kicking in, and this just revolution in artificial intelligence that's to a great extent powering our economy, certainly accounting for the vast majority of CapEx, capital expenditures in the country, and then the relaxation of the onerous regulatory framework under the Biden administration is stimulating the production of oil and gas, which is, of course, incorporated into everything, every economic transaction, honestly. There's a power component. And we are blessed here in this country to have an abundance of it, except the dumb Democrats don't actually want us to use any of it. Just one little problem. So I made the point, as I always do, that you never hear the Democrats talking about expanding the economic pie, always recutting it. And here's another little caveat I've added. Yeah, I've said that many times on the show. Don't mean to belabor that. But here's a caveat I've added to it. They not only seek to recut it, but while they're recutting it, it's shrinking because their policies actually shrink the economy. They don't boost economic growth. Now, the Fed yesterday did cut the benchmark interest rate as expected by 25 basis points or 0.25%. And for the first time in a while, there was dissension in the ranks of the Federal Reserve Board governors. Some wanted more. Some didn't want any. I mean, they're not very united. There's not a great consensus among the board decision makers there. And the president, of course, not happy. And I saw as well, I can't remember which senator it was on the business, Langford from Oklahoma. That's who it was. And he was saying, yeah, we should have gotten half a point and not a quarter point. And Jay Powell kind of stopped there and sort of implied we're going to pause for a while. It was the take that most of all those folks that just latch on to every word that comes out of his mouth. Something else I noticed, Rhino. He stands at a podium, okay, when he delivers his post-decision commentary. He stands at a podium. You know, in the past, they always sat down, kind of in board sort of structure, configuration. Do you think he's got some sort of, I want to look like a president here? I really do. I do. I think there's an ego component here. And he stands at a podium and fields those questions from the press. Now, it will bore you if you're not interested in that sort of stuff because he's already has a monotone delivery. And what he says is like you got to sort of unravel the words and the way he forms sentences. And then you get the press, who are from all over the world, that represent business news. Either it's dedicated business news outlets or they're part of the business news for a larger media outfit. And they usually ask very good questions. And typically what he answers is like, what did he just say? He's very non-direct. He's very indirect, very non-definitive, shall we say. Almost aloof and vague. But he did. He came out and said quarter point, and again, didn't give a great deal of confidence, in my view, that we'll see more cuts next year. we'll just see where all that goes. Now, the reaction was pretty decent from the Dow. We had a good day yesterday. Today, the Dow was up 474. It's experiencing a significant rally, but the NASDAQ is down. The tech-heavy NASDAQ, driven by Oracle's quarterly report yesterday, and they disappointed. Now, the bar has been set so high by the investment community because the price of the stock is so high as well. It's just very pricey, very frothy. And so that's causing a bit of a sell-off today in some of the high-tech names. By the way, there's a big AI conference going on as well, and they're telling the world this is not a bubble. Of course, you would expect to hear that at an AI conference, but I do think we're going to see some moderation because we've got these price-earnings ratios way, way, way on up that.
Disney doesn't seem to think it's a bubble because they just invested $1 billion with OpenAI. Saw that. In a licensing deal to allow you to create your own magical Disney adventure using their IP on, I believe it's Sora is the video generation tool.
Yeah. You know, that's pretty creative. They're a creative outfit. I don't know if that'll generate any revenue for them. It remains to be seen. But
I mean, just think about what the Disney Imagineers can do with an AI built to play with their characters and a tablet in front of a kid at a theme park.
Unbelievable.
They already have the drawing sessions where it's a whole classroom full of kids trying to draw whatever the Disney character of the day is. Well, instead of you're just getting to draw the picture and take it home, you're getting to make a whole little short film with any Disney character you want.
That's pretty cool. I mean, that will, I'm sure, be something that the kids will all want to participate in, and they'll be tugging on the parents, right? Or grandparents, as the case may be, to, okay, we got to have that. And they'll exchange their money for that is what will happen. That's not a bad thing. That's the business they're in. We got, it looks like up there in Washington, they may be poised to do a little voting on this health care legislation. We got to dig into that as well. Once again, we've got the mayor of Oxford, Robyn Tannehill, at 11:05, and Rickey Cole, former chair of the Mississippi Democratic Party, at 12:05. We are in the Element Wealth studio.
From the SuperTalk, Mississippi. Also on the SuperTalk app.
Find documents right where they belong.
Inside a Journey record jacket from the 1980s.
Gerard Gibert, SuperTalk, Mississippi.
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio. We appreciate you joining us. Ole Miss will host its first ever college football playoff game next Saturday. Sports Talk Mississippi will be at the library on the square in Oxford on Thursday and Friday, where you'll hear from coaches, former players, and more as we get you ready for one of the biggest games in Ole Miss history. Our coverage is brought to you by Pearl River Resort, your destination for casino thrills, family fun, and Southern hospitality. Some good food over there as well. So, Thomas, I just want you to know that you're once again wrong. And I'm not saying this just to prove you wrong. It's really more about just to show that I did some research based on your comments about the AWS investment in Madison County. 700 are already working in 4 buildings. 700. They have to hire 1,000 at an average wage of $66,000 to meet their part of their commitments on the deal that provided them with a fee in lieu of on their ad valorem taxes and an exemption from sales taxes during the construction period and also from corporate income taxes. Those are the concessions that were made, but they have to invest a minimum of $10 billion. It looks like that's easily going to be $30 billion, triple the investment. And already it's 700 workers with 4 of 16 buildings. And I have asked, how many of those are H-1B visa workers as well that are here in this country? I'm going to go out on a limb right now and say that fewer than 10 are. I bet there's not even 10. These are mostly gray collar type workers, as we call them. They're sort of in between the blue collar type manual labor work and the white collar type professional what would be considered professional technologists, if you will, data center architects, software developers and engineers, cybersecurity specialists, project managers of IT, just a long list. AI engineers, LLM developers. No, Thomas, I'm talking about AWS. I just said that. Yes, 4 of the 16 buildings are already humming right now, delivering for Amazon Web Services customers. And there are 700 employees in those buildings that are managing all of that IT infrastructure. Turns out that in the 4 buildings, there's about $8 billion of IT infrastructure in those buildings that is being managed by the staff they've already brought on board. It's also true that there is a shortage. I know you'd like to criticize the president for his remarks earlier in the year where he said that the U.S. lacks the adequate number. There is a shortage of skilled workers in key sectors such as chip manufacturing, chip design. It's not that Americans aren't capable of doing the work. There are just not enough of them. Specialized skills are needed. And in many cases, he did say that foreign talent that has more experience, more of them with experience in advanced semiconductor manufacturing, might be required to help train the talent in this country. My experience in hiring technical people throughout my 33-year career as an employer was that there was continuously a shortage, always a demand that exceeded supply. And one of the biggest problems that we found is that just weren't a lot of young people that were interested in doing that kind of work. Cybersecurity in particular, which is an area where we are desperate for talent. The demand for talent, more than 5 to 1 in terms of job opportunities to Americans with the requisite skills. They just don't enjoy, they don't seek those kinds of careers. And so it necessitates bringing in people. Now, if they're terminating Americans and just in jobs and backfilling them with foreign talent for less money that's willing to work for less money, that's a problem, and that's abusing the H-1B visa program. But when I find out, and I'll tell you, if Amazon does not provide that information, I'll let you guys know. If they are willing to share it, I'll share exactly what they say as far as the number of H-1B visa workers in central Mississippi that are on the org chart, employed by Amazon Web Services, full-time FTEs, full-time employees that are working in those facilities. There are 3,000, by the way, Thomas, at the fulfillment center, many more than was projected. They projected 1,200. It is doing better than thought. And even with all the automation that the company is implementing throughout its fulfillment centers, it's a little surprising to me that they got that many people. So, all good stuff. No, Thomas, not in Mississippi. I'm not even going to address it anymore. Yeah, Paul and Hernando says too much of Thomas. I agree. Paul, I want you to know he sent me about 3 pages of text since we've been on the air. So I only addressed a small smidgen of it, just so you'll know. Stephen Pontotoc says, take a look at the H-1B visa truck drivers. My understanding, Steve, is that, once again, there is a significant shortage of truck drivers. Is that true or not? That's my understanding, and this is why so many of the big trucking companies are moving rapidly towards autonomous commercial trucks as a way to mitigate that. That's what's being reported. J.P. Morgan Chase said America's security challenges are often framed in terms of equipment and investment, yet underpinning all of these issues is a more basic limitation. The United States does not have enough skilled workers to meet the demand. Elon Musk has warned about it. Big employers have been warning about this for some time. The cybersecurity thing is the one that honestly kind of stresses me out, because if we don't have enough skilled cybersecurity engineering talent in place and architects in place, we're at risk as a country of being breached by bad actors that want to penetrate our most sophisticated and most critical and private systems, such as our defense systems and our electrical grid, all of our various basic infrastructure, our banking and financial systems. We'd crash, honestly, as an economy if they were able to penetrate those systems and do a lot of bad things. It's a 7/24, 365 fight to guard those systems, and they're only as good as the technology implemented to shield them from these nefarious acts, and those are created by skilled human laborers. We need more of those. We need to be developing more of those. We need more young people to have an interest in those careers so that we can get them developed. Here at home, panhandling permits are now required in Jackson. That's what the Capitol Police says. That's new Mississippi, based on new Mississippi laws targeting panhandling, squatting, and homeless encampments. And anybody around the central Mississippi area, I'm not sure about the other parts of the state, but certainly, Rhino, you see it around the central Mississippi area, mainly in Jackson, but you don't have to necessarily be in Jackson, anywhere around here. You do see a lot of that happening on the busy intersections. I worry about their safety, man. Right over here, you know that, on 55 when you come up and you exit onto County Line Road to get here to the Mississippi Farm Bureau Federation building where SuperTalk headquarters is located. They're always out there. And there's numerous, and they're in the little bitty sliver median there that separates going straight in the exit lane there to get on County Line Road. I worry about that, man. I really do. But they will begin issuing $25 daily panhandling permits for the Capitol Complex Improvement District by January 1st, I should say, 2026. The Jackson Police Department still finalizing its policies for enforcing these new state laws. Surely other municipalities and jurisdictions across the state will also have to put some policies in place and some systems in place, right, to collect these panhandling fees, because that's state law that all goes into effect. If they don't have a permit, they're going to have to buy one to just go out there and panhandle. We're going to get to this health care situation up there on the hill on the other side of the break. Stay with us from the Element Wealth studio.
Interrupt this program.
Gerard Gibert.
Here we go. This is huge. Huge news. Huge news. Huge.
You need to listen to this.
Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
some heavy metal. Who is that?
Dio.
Okay, I'm not familiar. How did I miss that one? At first, I thought it was Metallica or Whitesnake or one of the heavy metal glam rock groups, so to speak. Dio, okay. Got it.
From the album Holy Diver.
Oh, got you.
Which a lot of people know that song, but Rainbow in the Dark's good too.
Got you. That reminds me, I have I'll tell you about it on the break. I have a musical request on the All Hit Request line coming up. So, before I get to this healthcare thing, because that gets a little involved, but I think it is worth discussing because there's possibly going to be a vote today on a GOP plan that would be in lieu of permanent extension of the enhanced subsidies that were enacted in the American Rescue Plan under Joe Biden, and then for a temporary period of time, and then extended until the end of this year in the Inflation Reduction Act. What a dumb thing that was. But, you know, we've talked about and the president is really promoting the provisions in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, the Families First Tax Act, I think is what it's called. And specifically, he's highlighting the deductibility. I stopped short of saying exemption because it's not an exemption. Deductibility of the premium component of overtime pay and tips, as well as the increase in the standard deduction for seniors, which means that less of their Social Security income, their benefit income, would be subject to federal income tax. And then also there's a deduction for certain automobiles, domestically made new automobiles, a deduction for the interest on any loan associated with that purchase. And then there's also an increase in the state and local tax threshold, the cap there at $10,000 since 2017, and that has been increased to $40,000. All of these are temporary provisions for the next, depending on which provision, 3 to 4 years, but they all went into effect in January of this year. But here's something to keep in mind. There are a handful of states, last I checked, 10 or 11, that whose state income tax laws do not align with federal income tax provisions. Mississippi is one of those. So what that means is that in order for those provisions we just discussed, we just listed there in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, also known as the Families First Tax Act, in order for those to produce benefit and apply in the states, well, the state has to pass law. Mississippi's one of those. I have checked this out, by the way, just to make sure before I shared that, and I've touched on it a couple of times. Well, all this really means is that if you're a person who earns tip income, now you get to deduct your tip income up to $25,000, depending on your household income, from your gross wages for purposes of calculating your federal income tax. You don't get to do that on your state tax unless our legislature acts and the governor signs into law some measure that would also make those applicable in the state of Mississippi. Well, there are a few states that are mad about it. And so Mississippi has it weighed in. I've seen nobody, from our legislature that said, yeah, we got to address that.
And even if they do address it in the next session, I highly doubt they'll make it retroactive.
That's probably true. It's a good point.
It'll go into effect for the next fiscal year.
That's probably true. It's a good point. Thank you. But there are some that are deliberately blocking their own residents from benefiting in their state taxes from these federal tax provisions. Colorado, New York, Illinois, and the District of Columbia, which is a separate taxing district. So think about that. They are blocking implementation of these new federal provisions. They're just mad at Trump, I guess, right? We can't do that, even though it'll save our people money. That just tells you how politicized even taxes are at the state level. Shame on you, states and District of Columbia. Fox News, SuperTalk News is now coming your way, and after that, it's Robyn Tannehill, the mayor of Oxford, Mississippi. Your Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
And now, another hour of the talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Begin your transition now.
Now on Super Talk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays, Hour 2 on this
Friday Eve.
It's our pleasure to welcome now the mayor of the city of Oxford, Mayor Robyn Tannehill. Mayor, good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. Good to see you, Gerard. It's a beautiful day in Oxford. I wish you were here doing the interview.
Absolutely. I'm sorry I missed you last time. Had a little flat tire problem when I was headed there for the banking symposium.
That's what.
Yeah. Sorry I didn't get to talk to you then,
Well,
but glad.
Missed you.
Well, I appreciate
All
that.
Good.
Always enjoy, of course, being in Oxford, and that symposium is really a big deal. I know we didn't get to talk, but it's bigger and better every year, isn't it, Mayor?
It is, and it's, it spans over a week, and so it's a great event that the Oxford Conference Center is excited to have every year, and great group of folks that come to town and do a lot of shopping and eating out, and all the things that we love for our conference goers to do.
Absolutely, and it's a great facility as well. I mean, you know this. You're blessed to have such a facility in a town, and in particular a town of that size. Let's be honest, not many towns of that size have that sort of quality facility, and so that's something truly an asset that you guys, and I know you are, should be proud of, and certainly all the attendees enjoy it as well. So great venue, great event. But you got another big one coming up here in just a little over a week, an historic event. First time Ole Miss playing in a playoff game since that system was created many years ago, and of course it is, I think, poised to have a significant economic impact on your city. What are your thoughts on that?
It will. We are so excited about this game, so excited for these players and for Pete Golding. This is, and for our residents and our Ole Miss fans that have waited so long for an opportunity like this. The economic impact during the month of December, which is one of our slower sales tax, food and beverage, and hotel motel tax months, is incredible for our community and for our businesses. Gerard, we keep up with the number of people that come to town. We use Placer AI, and so we can track IP addresses and know how many folks are in Oxford. And so, we've got a pretty good idea of exactly how many are here for different games. And for Tulane, we played them, in mid-September, and there were about 250,000 people in town for that game.
Wow.
And the economic impact was 64 million.
That's incredible.
Our largest economic impact this season was the LSU game at the end of September, and we had about 340,000 people in town and an economic impact of 74 million. So, that's the impact that it will have on our community next weekend. In a month that's never seen a football game in Oxford.
Well, that's true.
And having 9, that'll be our 9th game this year, which is just huge for our economy. Quite
the bonus for sure. And I think we have to be honest, don't we, Mayor, that when a big-time athletic program like that is enjoying success, it does permeate the entire area, the entire state, as a matter of fact.
It does. It does. I mean, it's just when we're winning in football and baseball and basketball, there's nothing like it. I mean, that you talk about how do we grow the number of visitors? I'll tell you how you do it. You win.
Yeah.
And Ole Miss has done just that. And we are experiencing about as much fun as we have in a football season in a really long time.
So, do you have any information at this point, Mayor, about what the hotel bookings are looking like for this weekend coming up in about a week and a half?
I have not seen occupancy rates yet. I actually visited with somebody at our Visit Oxford this morning, just talking about different plans that we're putting in place for that weekend, and we've not gotten occupancy rates. I will tell you that from the postings that I've seen from our local hotels, they are still requiring a 3-night minimum, and the prices are about double what I've ever seen them for any football game.
Yeah.
So, people keep saying, will this be the biggest economic impact game? It's hard to know. I mean, your opponent drives that, the time of the game drives that,
sure.
But also the average daily rate of the hotels drives what the economic impact is.
Sure.
And so, we could see a larger economic impact due to that.
So, Mayor, I know that you have had some success, certainly, in expanding and improving the infrastructure, the transportation infrastructure in particular, around the city. But it's no secret there's so many people at the university, and of course the growth of the city as well. Roads are a bit congested throughout the day. That's sort of a good problem to have. But what are your plans to address that, Mayor?
Well, it's a double-edged sword, Gerard. We're victims of our own success in a lot of ways, and that shows up probably most glaringly in traffic problems and real estate prices.
Yeah.
But when you have that capacity, there's not a whole lot you can do, honestly. I mean, we are improving roadways all over our community. University Avenue and Highway 7, which is one of our very busiest intersections. They are paving today, so that will be open and ready for all the folks that are coming into town. And that's a major thoroughfare into Oxford. And so we've pushed hard to get them to finish paving before that weekend. And it looks like they'll be complete today or tomorrow. We have all kinds of shuttles that run, from parking lots from our high school and our community college and the old Baptist Hospital parking garage, and buses that will get you to the Grove and to town and back to your car. But it is, we've done this 8 times this year already.
Yeah.
And it doesn't get any less crowded, and we can't grow the streets for that weekend.
Yeah.
But people seem to figure it out.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that people have figured out how to make it work, and we'll of course have officers in intersections directing traffic, trying to move it along as efficiently as possible. But when you get 300,000 people in a town built for 28,000, they're just, without a magic wand, I can't really fix some of those problems.
Sure. Understand. So how you doing financially? You talked about that a minute ago, the economic impact, of course, of the game weekends and having one in December. And you mentioned, curiously enough, that December typically is a down month. I think that is a little bit different. It varies somewhat from what most municipalities experience because it's Christmas shopping and there's a lot of retail sales. But you lose all the students, right? They typically go away, and they're not spending money during that month and a half or so. So how you doing, though?
Oxford cannot complain. We have got good problems in Oxford, Mississippi. That doesn't mean there aren't challenges with 28,000 full-time residents trying to fund infrastructure needs for 300,000. We spent $15 million on water and sewer upgrades last year and are budgeted to spend about $18 million this year, which doesn't leave a lot of money for special projects. People will look at Oxford and say, Oxford's got so much money. We are incredibly blessed. But the money that it takes to keep up with infrastructure for the number of people here, it's hard to make those numbers work sometimes.
Yeah.
But I can't pour them out.
Good.
We are doing well, and we are so appreciative of the people that call Oxford home at least half the year, and that show up for things like playoff games. So we are grateful.
Absolutely. So, Mayor, I got to ask you: Are you glad the Lane Kiffin saga is for the most part in the rearview mirror now? What a circus that was!
What a circus. Yes, I'm glad that the drama is in the rearview mirror. I'm glad that Lane Kiffin is in the rearview mirror. I hope he only comes back to visit when we play LSU and beat him next year. And I hope we don't see him again other than that.
Just the most bizarre thing I think we've ever witnessed, right, in college athletics overall. But we forget in a hurry. We move on, as you know, and I think that's what we're poised to do. Yeah. And,
hey, Pete Golding has this well under control. I think that every Ole Miss fan and certainly the Oxford community has complete faith in Pete Golding, and we are ready for a new era where it turns into football really being about the players and not the coach.
Yeah, totally agree, and I think we're well on our way in that respect. But it looks like you guys are all ready to go. Anything special? We got about 30 seconds left that you're looking for from our legislature as we approach the 2026 session.
Yes, we are asking for funds to expand our M-Trade Park, which is our park that has softball, baseball, and soccer fields. It's a huge economic draw for our area.
Yeah, it's a fantastic facility. I know our Sports Talk guys have done the show up there as well. Several times. Mayor Robyn Tannehill of the city of Oxford, Mississippi, has been our guest on Middays. Always good talking to you, Mayor, and a little hotty-toddy, and maybe we'll run into you at the playoff game. Thank you.
I hope so. Hotty-toddy.
Absolutely. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
They'll take any wrong direction. It's in their blood, you know. All roads lead to another road for renegades, rebels, and
Hi, this is Mark Chapman.
Okay, is everybody ready?
I'm ready. Ready here.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
looking at the world through the sunset in your eyes, juggling the train through clear Moroccan skies, ducks and pigs and chickens call, animal carpet wall to wall, American ladies 5 foot tall, sweeping cobwebs from the edges of my mind.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. That's from the all-hit request line, Marrakesh Express. Crosby, Stills, Nash. Striped Jabellas we can wear at home. That's, I believe it's Dijebella is the spelling. I kind of had a long time ago said, what the heck is that? Kind of a smock type, right? Sort of article of clothing. Jabellas, I think is the pronunciation. You hear them in the song. Isn't that right? The spelling? Dijebella? Is that right?
Yeah, it's the Northern African variation of what's known as the thob.
Okay, got it.
And usually the jalaba or jabella or whatever you pronounce it, usually has a hood.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. A hood. Interesting.
But yeah, it's the traditional attire in North Africa, the Middle East, and all over into parts of India, where it looks like a collared shirt that just extends all the way to your ankles.
Ah. Well, you know you got to be creative to come up with lyrics that include the word Jabella, right? Remember when, well, you weren't around then, but Dan Fogelberg in his Make Love Stay song. And some of the critics, the song critics would always kind of marvel at, I guess, point out the fact that they can't think of another song where the word exhume was used in the lyrics. But Fogelberg certainly did. What a creative composer, artist he was. So the Hill is set, the Senate in particular, to vote on a couple of different health care measures. They're still kind of debating which one is, and maybe both, get to the floor. Doubtful at this point. Senate Finance Committee Chair Mike Crepo of Idaho and Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee Chair Bill Cassidy, who's also a physician, a Republican from our closest neighbor to the west, Louisiana, senators. They unveiled, this was actually late Monday, a package that would really reform the way the Obamacare exchanges work. And there's more of a sense of urgency on that because, as we talked about, those premium tax credits, the enhanced premium tax credits, meaning enhanced because we've had these premium tax credit marketplaces since 2010 when the Affordable Care Act, a.k.a. Obamacare, was enacted into law. Those have been around for a long time. But Joe Biden and the Democrats, in their infinite wisdom, in the Inflation Reduction Act, they also decided, well, let's just juice those subsidies somewhat. And they did. And it turns out that where there's free money and cheaper money, people tend to flock to said programs. And so the enrollment virtually doubled, went from about 12 million to 24 million. Now, it's interesting to me that the vast majority of the people in this country that have commercial health insurance coverage receive it from their employer in the group market. Last I checked, Rhino, 160, 170 million people in the group market. And then you've got the exchanges, the marketplaces, so-called Obamacare. Well, that's for the individual market. The difference, group market, is what the word implies. It's groups of people that are employed. And that's honestly where insurers prefer to sell their products because you're dealing with one decision maker, not, let's say in this company, 200 to 300. You want to participate in the benefit plans offered? Well, in general, they're going to offer insurance from one carrier, your employer, and you can choose to enroll or not. Typically, those employers, if they're more than 50, by law, the employee-only insurance cannot exceed the cost of those premiums 9.3% of the employee's income. So even if you have a spouse that works as well, the safe harbor IRS calculation for an employer to avoid paying a penalty to the federal government if they don't offer what's deemed as affordable coverage is the test for that is that 9.3% of the employee's income. So if an employee is a $100,000 a year salaried employee working at a company with more than 50 employees and their cost of premiums, that means after their employer kicks in some contribution to it, if it exceeds $9,300, which would be really expensive individual insurance, well, then the employer has to pay a penalty, is the way it works. Well, the only point I'm making here is that, I don't know if you looked it up, 160, 170 million or so, is that right? Yeah, in the group coverage. We're talking about something that affects 24 million. I'm not saying that's nothing, but you're seeing nothing, right, that affects those of us who obtain our insurance from our employer, which is the vast majority of people in the country that are under commercial insurance. There's nothing, no changes, nothing for them. Now, it is true that most employers, because it's competitive for talent, they've got to structure a benefits package, so-called fringe benefits, that's competitive in the marketplace. And so even though that minimum, that safe harbor IRS minimum to avoid penalties is 9.3%, on average, once again on average across the country, most employees don't pay more than 25% of the cost of premiums for whatever category of coverage they have, be it individual only, individual and spouse, individual independent, individual and family. That's pretty typical. It averages out to that. Now, some pay more, some pay less, but the average is about 71, 72%. There's nothing mentioned in any of these measures that addresses the group market where most of us get our insurance. This is all focused on the individual market. And guys, the reality is insurance companies aren't too keen on selling coverage in the individual market. The big ones aren't. And it's because you're dealing with one person as opposed to a decision maker on behalf of potentially thousands. That's where they tend to focus. And you can think about a sales rep that sells insurance for a living. You got to sell a lot of them to get the commissions to make a living, whereas you land one big account, you're set. I mean, there's some that they literally have one account, and they live there servicing that one account. We had that in my industry, in the IT industry. We'd have an account manager that literally was had an office at our customer's location just to constantly take care of their needs. It's not unusual. And their living was made. Problem is, if you lose that deal, you lose everything. It's not like, well, I just go to the second one. Doesn't work that way. So it's a risk-reward sort of deal. Well, what the Republicans want to do, Senators Crapo and Cassidy, the bill named after them, they want folks to sign up for the bronze or catastrophic plans. In other words, they have what's called a lower actuarial value, meaning they just cover less and typically have higher deductibles and out-of-pocket costs up to the statutory limit, which I think this coming year is like $12,000 or something like that. It's going up a lot. I may be exaggerating. Maybe it's in the $10,000 range. It's still a lot out of pocket that you might be subject to paying. I know it constantly rises. Well, they want more to sign up for those lower cost plans, but then they're going to give them, literally send them $1,000 if they're between the ages of 18 and 49, and $1,500 if they're between the ages of 50 and 64 in a health savings account that they could direct individually to pay for out-of-pocket medical expenses. So what would happen is you'd buy a bronze or a catastrophic plan, you'd get subsidies under the old subsidy plan, and then you get $1,000, which doesn't cover a whole lot, to pay for direct medical expenses out of pocket rather than having those covered by insurance, which you pay a whole lot more for. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
From the Seabrook Dock.
Properly set all controls before recording.
All systems go.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Rick Ocasek in the cars there. So over there in the House, they're cooking up a health care plan as well. And there's some members who are kind of maneuvering to bypass the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, and also Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries in a bipartisan way. So the Speaker does not want to simply extend the enhanced tax credits. Those are due to expire in a couple of weeks here. And, of course, if no agreement is reached, over 20 million people are going to see their health insurance rise rather dramatically. And that's going to be a political challenge, I think, for the Republicans. Republican Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania, he represents, by the way, one of the districts that Vice President Kamala Harris won last year. So they're working on something as well, which includes, by the way, a temporary extension of the enhanced subsidies. The bill coming out of the Senate we talked about from Senator Crapo and Senator Cassidy, that measure does not extend the enhanced subsidies. Rather, it implements this new health savings account concept where, as we discussed in the last segment, all those whose income is below 700% of the federal poverty level, they would, if they purchase a catastrophic or a bronze plan, there are 3 levels of plans, the bronze, the silver, the gold, and they just have to do with the level of coverage. And, of course, naturally, premiums are more expensive for a silver plan than a bronze and a gold for a silver. And that also typically have lower out-of-pocket costs, lower co-pays, deductibles, co-insurance in the higher-cost plans. In other words, you pay more premiums, less out-of-pocket. Pay more out-of-pocket, lower premiums. It's pretty understandable, I think, pretty logical. And so what they're proposing is, rather than you just continuing to receive these subsidies to buy bronze plans, you're still going to get that, by the way, under the old subsidy model. But in addition to that, the goal here is to encourage more people to buy bronze and catastrophic plans. I mean, this is something you've talked about a lot, that have more minimal coverage. So really, they benefit healthier young people. More than anything, that's who benefits. You've made that point that, you know, as a younger, healthy person, I don't want to pay for everybody else's health care. And one of the problems that...
Especially if, after paying for everybody else's health care, you can no longer afford to see the dang doctor.
That's true. So, you know, there's a provision of the Affordable Care Act that often goes overlooked and doesn't get a lot of discussion. And this is important for folks that said we just need to go back to the way it was. And I'm not opposed to that, but it's worthy to point out that before the Affordable Care Act, insurance companies could charge older people, sick people, women, tobacco users, you can go down the list, more than younger, healthy people. There was no limit on it. If it was 10-1, so be it. What the ACA did was it has a limit on that ratio. They call it community rating. If there's insurance folks out there that are in the health insurance business, they know exactly what I'm talking about here. It's called community rating. So it's kind of like when you buy car insurance. If you got a bunch of wrecks on your record, you're going to pay more than a person who doesn't. The problem is people who don't, they're also paying for the expenses of the people who do use the insurance, essentially, and have wrecks and other costs that insurance covers associated with your insured vehicle. Same is true in healthcare, except we're talking about someone's health here. So, again, if you've got the pre-existing conditions, that's another thing, that before the Affordable Care Act, insurance companies could say, no, we're not selling you any insurance. They could cancel you if you contracted a condition. Affordable Care Act stopped that. Most people like that, but I got to tell you, going back to 2009, before this thing passed in March 10.
Well, before you get to that, most people like filet mignon. It doesn't mean everybody can afford to
that's
eat
true.
It every day of the year.
Well, let me just say, that's where I was going, and I appreciate that. What I remember writing an article back in 2009 saying, hey, wait, all this sounds great until you get the bill. If you think that they're just going to gratuitously and just out of the goodness of their heart here and some act of charity on the part of the insurance companies, okay, sure, we'll just cover all that, no additional expense. It doesn't work that way. It just doesn't work that way. So that's why it was always a ruse when Obama and the Democrats said, oh, we're going to drive the cost of premiums down. Wait a second. You're telling the insurance companies you got to pay for a whole lot more, and premiums are going to go down? What planet are you on? That's crazy. And that's exactly what happened. And somehow their theory was, so you'll know, although it's a flawed one, everybody's going to have insurance, and that will, even though we're changing all the rules about what's paid for, what's covered in the community rating and all that pre-existing conditions, the fact that we got more people insured and spreading the risk would drive the premiums down, except they miscalculated that by a lot. We also had this thing called high-risk pools that they tried, but it was poorly designed. I know you're shocked the government designed something poorly.
Well, I mean, just look at the federal poverty level itself. Look at how poorly designed that concept is.
It's terrible.
We're basing entire drastic changes to policy that impact millions of people based on a formula developed by a single economist in the early 60s that hasn't been revised since then.
That's totally true.
It was based on how much it costs to make yourself survive for a year and food prices from 1964.
It wasn't designed to be a vehicle for a permanent way of life. And that's what it's evolved into.
But now we're having discussions about 700% of the federal
poverty
That's
level.
six figures for an individual.
It's $105,000. That's exactly right. It's $105,000 for an individual. $105,000.
Pay no attention to the millions of people mooching off the system and getting crap all over the place for free. No. Let's just keep putting it on the backs of the middle class.
Totally true. And I will just point out once again that what permits the mooching is the terrible systems we have, because all this is done electronically. Every bit of this is processed electronically, administered electronically. The systems are terrible, and we're never going to cut out all of this misspending and all of these scams and wasteful spending until we fix those systems. It's never going to happen. The whole thing with the Medicaid fraud in Minnesota, completely a function of the terrible systems. The GAO that came out last week and said, yeah, we went and made up fictitious Social Security number, and we were able to pull down premium tax credits in a federal system. And the last I checked, the federal government that issues and administers and manages Social Security numbers. How can that be? How can that be? It's just amazing to me. It'd be like if somebody just walked in here and said, okay, just give me a paycheck. And there's no regard for, are you an employee? Are you hired? It's the same thing. That would never happen in private business, but it does in government every dang day. And all these programs. And then the other problem, to your point, with the federal poverty level.
Because half the country seems to get some sort of joy, and the politicians that are on that side keep getting reelected by playing to the stupidity of half the population, and the other half is stuck paying for it while the politicians that represent them sit on their hands.
And by the way, that half that's paying for it, you know what they're doing? Working. They ain't got time to go deal with all this crap. They rely on, sadly, people they elect, right, to take care of that stuff and make sure that their tax money is treated as their own. But then we put these terrible systems in place that just allow to make up fictitious Social Security numbers and just get, I think one of them they determined was receiving $10,000 a month of premium tax credits.
I'm just saying, continuing down the road of just let's try to put a Band-Aid on a bullet wound and somehow fix Obamacare is like putting square tires on the car and just hoping the bumps will eventually work themselves out.
That's a good metaphor. That's absolutely true. I love that, but that sure does seem that's what we're trying to do here is just trying to dance around the edges here. I don't know. I applaud Crapo and Cassidy for doing something. And so the theory is Well, more people are going to buy the lower cost, catastrophic, and bronze plans. Thus, the taxpayers will be on the hook for lower subsidies, and they're going to get this $1,000 a month. I just don't know how much that moves a year, pardon me. I don't know how much that moves the needle. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Poly up of Mississippi.
Check it out. Let's do this.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's get on with it.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays from the Element Wealth studio. So you reminded me of something talking about the antiquated federal poverty level structure. And that is, we had this issue, by the way, not only at the federal level, but the state level, that is typically referred to as the subsidy cliff. And I think I shared it on the program. So the original Affordable Care Act ACA marketplace plan had a cap of 400% of the federal poverty level. Anybody that makes more than that, you don't get any subsidy. And so no doubt, there's some scheming and maneuvering that takes place where someone tries to plan their income just to stay under that 400% of the federal poverty level to remain eligible for those subsidies. Well, it ain't just health care subsidies where that's an issue. SNAP, Medicaid, there's a number of them.
But when you add them
assistance.
all up, you would have to honestly make over $100,000 to make up for all the free crap the moochers get from your tax dollars.
We need some actionable policies that address this subsidy cliff issue. And that's where the Democrats are being disingenuous, because you'll hear them talk about the case where a couple makes $85,000 a year and their insurance is $150 a month. I don't know the exact figure, but I'm pretty close to the ballpark there. Just thinking through it, it's probably more like $300 a month. Yeah. But if they made $85,000 and $2 more, then it goes to $1,200 a month. So they're going to try to make sure they keep their income below that. Well, that's actually counterproductive, obviously. So you don't have any desire to move up the income ladder, take on more responsibility, produce more, and just.
Wait, you're telling me government intervention and overreach has unintended consequences? No.
It's like I said earlier that their policies not only recut the pie, they shrink the pie. There's no focus on expanding the economic pie, which is what we should be hyper-focused on, because that's how you produce wealth. It's just simple as that. Well, the subsidy cliff's a problem. So along come the Republicans and the Crapo-Cassidy bill with a 700%, as you pointed out. It's more than 100. That's $105,000 for an individual. They would be eligible for credits. Now, it means that they would be responsible for all premium costs greater than $8,600. Typical individual coverage in this country is a little more than $10,000 on average. Now, it's probably less is what you're finding in Mississippi, because we are actually one of the lower cost health insurance states. And we did look up, by the way, that the deductible threshold, what'd you say, 10,200 or 600?
10.6.
10.6. So for an individual,
up from 10,150 last year.
Okay, so it went up about $450. So, and then for a couple or family coverage, it's double that. It would be 21.2. There's still a lot of out-of-pocket costs, man. You think about a family, 21.2. that they'd have to pay before insurance? Now, some things insurance has to cover without any deductibles or copays. Preventative care, for example. The theory was more people would go to their primary care doctor, get tests and screens, and have little or no out-of-pocket costs associated with that, and we'd be healthier and thus avoid the need for more serious medical coverage.
And if a frog had wings, it wouldn't bump his butt every time it jumped.
That's the theory, though. I'm not telling you I agree with it. I'm just, you know that, the architects of it, that's what their thoughts were. And then I did touch on the high-risk pools, and that is a problem in that seriously ill people being part of the same pool do drive up the premiums for everybody. So there was a concept known as high-risk pools that was supposed to be part of the original Affordable Care Act, but it was poorly designed. It didn't last like 2 years, and then it just folded. What wasn't funded properly, wasn't designed properly, all the above. We should really consider going back to that. So I will say that U.S. Senator and also physician Roger Marshall, he has the other. I knew there was another plan. So there's two. There's the Crapo Cassidy, and these are all Republicans, by the way. He's got one called the Marshall Plan, isn't that clever? Or the Lowering Healthcare Costs for Americans Act. And he does actually have that included, by the way, in his legislation, supporting high-risk patients by funding state-run invisible insurance pools that would stabilize markets and take the pressure off premiums for everyone. That is a good idea. And that was actually part of the original Affordable Care Act. But, of course, putting that on paper and implementing it, as you well know, are two different endeavors, and it was just poorly executed. And, heck, that was 15 years ago. We're coming right back after the news with Rickey Cole, former Mississippi Democratic Party chair.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Winter is here again, oh Lord. Haven't been home in a year or more.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 3, the afternoon portion of Middays. We're live from the Element Wealth Studio on this
Friday Eve.
We welcome now Rickey Cole, former chair of the Mississippi Democratic Party. Hey, Rickey, how's it going? Good to see you, man.
Hey, Gerard, I'm fine. How you doing?
Yes, sir. Doing really good on this sparkling winter day here as we watch the days get shorter. And, of course, Christmas right around the corner. And then, of course, those legislators gather up underneath the dome down there. We just hope that they get some good stuff done and stay out of our pockets and take care of the people's business. We wanted to have you on, of course. Always respect your views and your perspective on just kind of the current state. Let's start with just the political landscape in our country. Rickey, it just feels like we're more polarized than ever, and that there's just little interest in really working together to address some of our critical issues. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, you know, Gerard, the loudest voice in the room is not always right. And unfortunately, we have allowed the loudest voices among us to completely dominate the discussion. I don't see in my day-to-day interactions with folks the level of polarization that exists among the policymakers and particularly the people in Washington. I think most people are just trying to make a living and take care of their families and stay healthy and enjoy the holidays. And I think a lot of what we see is hype. And, you know, we've gotten to the point where we hear people threatening civil war and taking violent action and all of that sort of foolishness. And 99 Americans out of 100 don't believe in that nonsense. But unfortunately, the big mouths have command of the room altogether too often.
That's a great point. Hadn't really thought about that. But I tend to agree with you, Ricky. I run into people across our great state, as you do, and many of these things that are going on and all this bickering, they just tune it out. They're just, as you say, they're more concerned about just carrying on their lives and raising their families and making sure that they're doing the Lord's work in many cases, of course. And they just tune all this out, and that noise just keeps getting louder and louder to the point that it's almost indiscernible. Like, what are they even saying?
And most people are sick of it and don't want a thing in the world to do with it. And that's a shame, because we need robust and healthy civic discourse in this country. But we don't need these reality TV show sound bites and arguments that amount to nothing.
Ricky, it feels like that almost every word, every statement, every action by our elected leaders, in particular in Washington, it's always with a tilt in recognition and consideration of the next election cycle.
Right. And it's not supposed to be that way. You know, we have an election, and then the election's over, and it's time to govern. And when it's time to govern, it's time to make compromises and come together and sit down and say, hey, let's work this thing out. The best legislation is that which doesn't satisfy any one faction. This is a big country. You can't if you're satisfying one group completely, you're leaving nearly 50%, sometimes more than 50% of the people out of the picture. So I believe that the best legislation is always bipartisan. And I don't think we could get a bipartisan agreement on a thing in Washington today.
Well, and don't you think that, and it's really, phrase it as a question, do you believe that the framers, the founders, and their wisdom thought about that with this 60-vote threshold in the Senate? That legislation that comes over from the House, it was kind of thought those House folks are just kind of rowdy and impulsive, and they do things, and they send it over to the Senate. We're supposed to slow it down, say, wait a second, and get more of a consensus. Do you think that's a good idea?
Well, Washington warned us against factions in his farewell address.
He did.
And in the Federalist Papers, you will see some similar warnings and efforts to keep that from happening. Of course, despite what Washington said and despite the best intents, political parties emerged before the end of Washington's administration, and they've been around ever since. And I'd be a hypocrite deriding political parties, having been in the leadership of one for nearly 40 years now. But I believe that the rules of the Senate, as they were developed, first written by Jefferson, by the way, and modified and amended and changed over time, the rules of the Senate serve the purpose of the Senate, and the Senate's purpose is to cool the passions of the moment. Unfortunately, I believe altogether too often in the House and the Senate, and this is happening in the Mississippi legislature too, leadership plays awfully cute with the rules, and they abuse the letter in order to circumvent the intent of the rules. But if I were in the Senate, I would not favor the abolition of the filibuster. I think it serves an important purpose, and I think if a bill can't get 60 votes in the Senate, it probably ought not to pass.
Gotcha. So tell us your assessment of the Democratic Party. You, as you indicated, been involved with it for a long time and in a leadership role for 40 years. Where is the Democratic Party today, do you believe? And let's talk about in the nation and then in the state.
Well, nationally, I think we saw some signs of life in the elections around the country in last month, in November, and even as late as the mayor's race in Miami the other day, the pendulum swings back and forth. The Democratic Party is the oldest political party still functioning in the world. And with any old and venerable institution, there are going to be barnacles accumulate, and sometimes you have to scrape those off, and sometimes you just have to press on with them things. But I still very strongly support our Democratic Party. I think we have some rising talent at the national level, not necessarily always people that you hear about first. Again, we're talking about those loudest voices. The loudest voice is not always right. But I think we have some rising talent that will serve us well in the future. And I think that there's a broad constituency for Democrats around the country. Generationally, there's a broad constituency, particularly among young people. And I remain very bullish on the Democratic Party.
Okay. What about in the state of Mississippi, Ricky?
Well, of course, I was very pleased at the outcome of the special elections for the legislature. Glad to see, now Senator Mayor Dupree from Hattiesburg get elected to the Mississippi State Senate. I believe he'll be a leading voice up there from day one, and he'll represent the Pine Belt well. And Mayor Dupree has a history of building coalitions and working in a bipartisan fashion for the best interest of all. So I think that was a smart move on the part of the voters of Hattiesburg. He won very handily over a very qualified Republican opponent, and he certainly beat the spread by a whole lot. I think that race wound up being about 70-30. And then we have a new state senator from DeSoto County who's a Democrat, a new state representative from over in northeast Mississippi who's a Democrat. All of those seats were Republican seats, they're Democratic seats. And I think that the fact that the Senate now has appreciably more Democrats in the Senate, I think you'll see a change in some of the policy that goes through the Senate. And I think that's good. I don't think any party should have an untrammeled supermajority for a long time. We get lazy with it when we have too much of control. So, and I see some bright spots around the state coming up in our state elections in 2027, where there'll be a lot of open seats for state and county offices and district offices.
Yeah. We're up against a break right here, but if you can hang around with us, we'll continue the discussion on the other side. Are you good?
I'll be right here in this rocking chair.
Yes, sir. We got Rickey Cole, former chair of the Mississippi Democratic Party, on the middays. We're coming at you live from the Element Well studio, and we're coming right back.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is on
SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays. We got Stevie Wonder bumping us into this segment here. We're talking to Rickey Cole, former chair of the Mississippi Democratic Party. So, Rickey, I got to tell you, I have had the pleasure of meeting with you a few times and keep up with you a little bit on social media. You've been on the program. I think this is your second time. We're glad to have you. You just don't impress me, I got to be honest, as a person that is completely bought in to the entire Democratic Party agenda. I think some of it you do, but I don't feel like you do. Can you just share with the audience what do you sort of support and what maybe do you dissent on?
Well, the Democratic Party agenda is defined by Democrats, not by the critics of the Democratic Party.
True.
And I think that's a big part of the problem. I think our opposition's propaganda has been so successful that in many minds, perhaps even yours, Gerard, there is an unfair caricature of what Democrats believe. We as a general rule, the Democrats I know lead very ordinary mainstream lives and want very ordinary mainstream things. For example, I am a capitalist. I am an unapologetic capitalist. And the vast majority of the Democrats that I know are people who work for a living, make a living, invest, some of them pretty well off, and a lot of them like me, just staying fat, but other than that, not necessarily making a whole lot of money. But this whole notion of, well, at first we were called socialists, and now we're being called communists. And that's just ridiculous and laughable. Sure, there are public programs that are publicly funded through taxpayer dollars that wind up being a public-private partnership, especially you were talking earlier about healthcare earlier. On the show you were talking about healthcare. Healthcare has always been a public-private partnership, and it will never be pure capitalism, and it will never be pure socialism either. It's going to be a mix. And there are lots of aspects of our economy that are now a mix or have always been a mix and will always be a mix. But the Democratic Party is no enemy to capitalism, certainly no enemy to profit. And I'm a big believer in making as big a pie as we can and making that pie grow. I'd love to see 4% growth per annum in this country, for not just for the rest of my life, but the rest of my children's lives, because I know that prosperity does spread out to everyone. I've lived long enough to know that the good old days are no such thing, and I still believe that the best days are ahead of us. Because I lived in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s and the aughts and the teens, and I ain't interested in going back to nary one of those decades. and things have improved largely because of the economic growth of our predominantly capitalist mixed economy in this country and around the world. And the global economy has been good to this country and has been particularly good to Mississippi.
Okay, so Rickey, hearing you with that response, you and I are a lot more aligned, I think, even though we come from different parties. But to just be perfectly honest with you, my friend, I don't feel like that same opinion and those same sentiments and the same attitude is being shared and conveyed and even believed by the top leaders in the Democratic Party. And it's just based on what they say, what they propose. It's that's how I reach my conclusion. I think many in our country feel like, well, the Democrat Party is leaning more towards more government control, more socialism, more intervention. Heck, our largest city just elected someone who's unapologetic about being a redistributionist, a socialist, and wanting government to have more control over various functions within that city, and was supported by people who absolutely believe there should be limits on capitalism. You can't have capitalism with limits. That doesn't mean we don't need reasonable regulations. I acknowledge that. But I believe if you limit the income ability of any individual or any organization, you might as well do it for all. Because eventually, you may not believe in trickle-down economics, but I think the trickle-down misery and the trickle-down limits and thresholds and caps, I absolutely believe is a real thing with certain policies. So I like what you're saying, honestly. I don't know that many in high-level positions in the Democratic Party would sign on to your viewpoints.
Well, I'll take you back to the beginning of our interview here today, just to remind you that the loudest voices in the room are not always right.
Okay. Yes, sir. I get you.
And I must point out that the Democratic Party has never been, and certainly is not today, a monolith. Even when there's a Democratic president in the White House, in my lifetime, we've never had a president who commands his constituency and his fellow elected officials in the way this current president commands Republicans. And, and I suspect it's kind of hard to be an orthodox Republican when the orthodoxy changes from tweet to tweet. So I feel y'all's pain because I've had to deal with inconstancy in leadership too. But the reality is that if you will look at the Democratic platform from 2024, it's predominantly a mainstream platform. And the policies that have been the marquee policies for the Democratic Party over the last nearly 100 years have predominantly been pro-growth policies. And many of those policies have been the reason for the unprecedented increase in quality of life for the American people, at least through my lifetime and going back a generation or two before.
Well, I certainly agree.
I have to take the long view because I'm getting older by the day.
We all are.
So ideas come and go, but the philosophy and the perspective remains virtually unchanged.
Okay. Well, I will certainly agree with you.
That's my perspective looking from the inside out.
Okay.
Looking from the outside in, you probably see it very different.
I certainly agree with you, and sometimes I get criticized for my optimism that I believe our best days are ahead. I absolutely do. I just believe in the resiliency and the creativity and the ingenuity and the commitment of Americans to constantly make America better for Americans. We're aligned on that. But I just feel like that the Democrat approach that's a little different than mine. I believe that's done through private sector innovation, and Democrats tend to believe that that's better facilitated with more government programs and just more government scope and control over the economy. I just don't know that too many of them would admit the way you have that they're sort of unabashed and unapologetic capitalists. I applaud you for that. I remember, Ricky, at the DNC event back in 2012. I've played this clip on the show before. Reporter Peter Schiff, kind of incognito, was going around and asking the Democrat delegates, what do you think about banning profits? And this was 13 years ago, and they said, yeah, I'm for that. We should ban profits. Like, what? And we've got Democrats saying we shouldn't have any billionaires, which means you're limiting opportunity. I don't feel like you support those policies. Got about a minute left.
I want to see everybody in this country have a good standard of living so that they can be productive and so that our country can be the example to the rest of the world in terms of having an economy that serves every American. It's not happening that way today.
Okay.
But I think if the two parties in Washington will sit down, and particularly on this healthcare issue. Now, me and you both know they're not going to solve that between now and Christmas.
Absolutely.
But if they would spend the next year working in earnest, a program could be hashed out that would serve the best interest of the people and wouldn't bankrupt the Treasury either.
I agree with you on that, and I do totally agree that we need some collaboration in that effort. It's an extremely complicated issue, as you well know, with a million moving parts in it. No one person has that all mastered, and we need a bunch of smart people to gather together and to figure it out. Ricky, always appreciate you coming on, and I know we'll be talking to you again soon. Love to get your perspective. It's been a valuable and informative conversation. You have the merriest of Christmases and the happiest of holidays, my friend. Thank you.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you, Gerard, and everybody who's listening. Thank you.
We're coming right back.
From the Seabrook.
Come on.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
All right, we are back
on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays. So, I know, Rhino, I had you play it. Heck, it's probably been a couple of years, but it's Peter Schiff, who was a media figure. I'm not sure what he does these days. He's more of an analyst. But it was the 2012 Democratic National Convention. I don't remember the location, but he was at the convention with a mic. I mean, as a journalist, but he wasn't really telling anybody who he was. And, of course, most people on the Democrat side of the aisle didn't recognize him. And he was literally asking people as he just was kind of walking inside and outside the venue, hey, what do you think about banning profits? I mean, that literally was the direct question. Now, this is 13 years ago. And I was just shocked. It was in Charlotte. Shocked at the number of people who said, yeah, I'm all for it. Now, that's 13 years ago. Think now about just how far to the left that party has lurched since then. So it's hard to say, all due respect to my friend Rickey, who I do absolutely believe is a capitalist, in exactly as he described it himself.
He's also tribalistic to a point, because he basically refused to say what he didn't like about or didn't agree with the Democratic Party.
Agree. And you know, we need more, I believe, open discussion, honest, frank discussion across all party lines. I'm not talking about any specific party, but I don't have a problem criticizing things that Republicans do if in my opinion, they're not good policy. We've certainly done that here in a respectful, civil way. I never make it personal. I don't think that's necessary. And in fact, I'm not even sure that really influences. It may some. I get it. But there have been situations where
it really hacks off the ones that are doing it just for the attention.
Completely agree. Which is the wrong reason to be doing it, right? So, in my view. But when Schiff was running around in 2012 asking just delegates about this banning profits, yeah, that's something I could sign on to. Like, you wouldn't be here if profits were banned. Did they ever think about that?
No.
Zero. It's like one of the people that leans left, he leans way left, that I was having a social media conversation with. You know, and I talked about this feeling I have that opinion I have that Democrats aren't interested in growing the pie, only recutting it. You never hear about pro-growth policies. That's why I think I can say with confidence that there's no interest in growing the pie. And what he said was, well, growth is measured by jobs and wages. And, of course, I had to say, you understand, that only comes by growing the pie, you idiot. You don't just magically, unlike in what Democrats think, and especially Robert Reich, who just thinks, oh, yeah, well, you don't have any business, you don't have any revenue, it's okay, you just need to keep paying the people that are working at wherever they're working, even though it's losing money. They literally think that just out of the charity aspect of your business, you just should keep people employed and pay them, even though they don't have anything to do. It's just mind-boggling to me. But it's pretty hard to convince me these days that the Democrats aren't full-throated socialists. And if you think about any challenge we have in this country, their solution is always exactly the thing that created it, which is more government. More government, and by the way, we got to go get more money from the most successful in society. Just beat them to a pulp, to the point that they just say, Uncle, say, like Maggie Thatcher famously said, run out of OPM, other people's money. They just say, Uncle, I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm not taking the risk. I'm not putting forth the effort if I'm not going to get rewarded. That's just human nature. But we all know that those policies, they're counter, are they not? They're antithetical to human nature. They just are. And that's why when you start putting in limits and thresholds and caps and none of this, no profit, no billionaires, no this, I promise that trickles down and affects everybody. You may think for about 2 seconds, look at that, man, I beat them down. They're not getting those billions anymore. Okay, now what? I mean, who benefited from that? Nobody. You hurt everybody in doing that. And by the way, if you guys don't want to be enriched, I'm talking to our audience. I'm talking to the Democrats who are constantly pouncing on that. Like I said, quit using the stuff they create because you're making them wealthy with every keystroke you type and every word you utter, basically. I think there's a problem. That's why it's so hard to get any bipartisan legislation. I agree with Ricky that, yeah, it'd be great if we could get bipartisan legislation.
Maybe he should tell his side to quit being so stupid.
They just don't seem to have any interest in just conceding or wavering on anything as far as and that's because that their solution to everything is government. They don't want to hear any other alternative. You can't persuade them against
because
anything.
Because they can't enrich themselves if it's extra governmental.
That seems to be the case. And that's just bad. That is not what made this country great. Government didn't make it great. Government's job is to create the policy environment that allows individuals to thrive, to produce, to reach their fullest potential.
Allows, not guarantees.
Right, correct. Right. That's the difference between equality and equity, right? The former is allows, and the latter is force. The latter is literally a redistribution scheme at the end of the day, which just produces subpar outcomes at best, if not deleterious outcomes. Man, oh man. So I did pull up the Senator Marshall's health care plan, and this just kind of illustrates, I just wanted to pull this up just to kind of show how dang complicated this is. It's 148 pages of legalese gobbledygook. And I look at the first general provision, right? I mean, I'm literally on page 2 after the table of contents. And here's a paragraph. Notwithstanding paragraphs 2 and 3, in no case shall the premium assistance amount with respect to any coverage month exceed the excess, if any, of the amount determined under paragraph 2A over A. In the case of a taxpayer whose household income expressed as a percent of poverty line is less than 200%, $10. I mean, it just goes like, what the heck? And what this is trying to do is eliminate what has caused a lot of fraud, is the zero-cost premiums. And you remember right on the show here when our legislature was debating Medicaid expansion, and we had Mike Chaney, Commissioner of Insurance, in here. I said, you know, they just passed these enhanced credits in the ACA exchanges that everybody you're wanting to put on Medicaid expansion, we could go get them zero-cost premiums in the commercial coverage marketplaces today to address that issue. Zero cost. The problem, as you know, is our federal government has the wisdom of saying, wait, you qualify for this, but we're sending you to Medicaid. You know, that was the problem. And nobody seemed to want to address that issue. But what's happened is, as we've learned, is a lot of people have signed up unknowingly. As we've said on the show the last couple of weeks, and because they have zero-cost premiums, they don't get a bill, but the insurer is getting money from the federal government. And I got to be careful. I can't just pin down and assert empirically, unequivocally, that they tricked and defrauded people into signing up?
Sure as hell looks like it.
It does look like it, though. I could make a pretty dang good case for it, especially when you consider the millions of people who have this insurance and have never filed a claim. But your tax money is going to those companies. Shame on them. It's not all of them. It's not. But it's enough that it's costing us a pretty penny, and it's a huge waste of money. And people are signed up and in these plans that don't even freaking know it. It's just mind-boggling. And guess what the problem is? Terrible systems, again. It's terrible systems.
Run by stupid people.
That's the double whammy of all time. Bad technology run by bad people, incompetent people. That is a recipe for what we now know, which is a massive boondoggle of taxpayer money that in this case is providing zero value because they're not even filing claims. It's unfathomable.
And so all of the blame for all of these headaches lies firmly at the feet of Democrats who passed Obamacare without a single Republican vote.
And are obstinate and intransigent to any changes to it. We got the final segment of Middays coming back. The Dow up 600 points right now. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
What? This is so awesome.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Paul and Hernando says they aren't stupid people, like Rhino said. They're people that just don't care because they're going to get a paycheck whether they do their job or not. I tend to agree with you, Paul, and that's a bad situation. That does not serve society in the best way.
But sadly, all the people that are stupid or worthless vote Democrat, and we have to suffer through the consequences of all the stupid people voting for stupid people.
Dan in Hattiesburg kind of echoes that sentiment. He says, well, Rhino, some people are so stupid that they don't know they're stupid. I'll add this one to it, Dan. I agree with you, is that truly smart people know their limitations, know their shortcomings intellectually, and the not-so-smart people, they think they know everything. It's kind of what we got going on to some extent in government as well. I mean, and that's universal across all humans. Larry and Ma says, why'd you let him get away with talking bad about Trump? And he didn't, look, talking about Rickey, he didn't name the president. I mean, I felt like he might be referring to him kind of as having the bully pulpit. But we've done our part to smear and tarnish and denigrate, deride the Democrats in those positions as well. So that's fine. Rickey can do that. And I guess what he failed to point out, if you could call it a failure, I don't know that I'd call it a failure, but he didn't point out it's both sides. It's a little bit of both sides, all for the attention component of it.
But again, I point out he's tribalistic because he's defending the Democrat Party from the accusations of being socialist or communist.
I hear
when
you.
They just elected Mom Donnie.
I know. I know. And it's kind of hard to accept that they haven't moved in that direction really, really hard. So we had someone, the Azalea on the C Spire text line says, have you ever asked a Mississippi representative or potential rep if and how they are working to reduce our state's dependency on the federal government dollars? Thousands of times, John. Thank you for that question. I absolutely have. I've spoken about it, I've written about it, and I've talked to our representatives about it. And look, the simple answer is no laws are going to change that. The only thing that's going to change it is growing our economy. It's just simple as that. When household incomes continue to rise, and we're on a good positive trajectory there. When we start retaining the people who are subject to earning the most in their professional careers that are coming out of our colleges, and that's not going to happen if we don't have jobs for them, that's how we reduce our dependency on government. There's nothing that we're going to do from a legislative perspective to do that. John from Hardeman County, Tennessee says, that's incredible. He's talking about us communicating that these insurance companies are signing people up. That's been determined. I'm not just speculating this, Rhino. You know, this has been determined by that CBO analysis that was done. What would be the proper term for that? On a covert basis, I guess, without knowledge, where they posed
an unannounced audit.
Okay, there you go. Where they created these fictitious Social Security numbers and all that sort of stuff. Incognito, I guess you could call it. But, yeah, that's absolutely determined. So what John's saying is, thank you so much for the information. My phone blows up with people trying to get me insured. Yeah, I think we all do. And look, that's their job. The problem is when you don't do anything that you think you did that got you signed up, because they know you're not going to get a bill. But they're going to send that information to the federal government. That's the way it works. And they're going to get money for coverage for you, and you don't even know you have it. That's absolutely been determined by the...
and all the information they need to do so can be gleaned from an email or a splash page on a website that says, hey, let's check and see if you're covered.
Correctly right. That's absolutely right. So we also had someone on the C Spire text line that said that his insurance is going from $141 a month to around $550 a month for with a $5,000 deductible, and this is through the ACA, self-employed. Also checked with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Mississippi for a family of three, $1,600 a month. That sounds about right. Blue Cross is not one of the carriers that sells in the marketplace. There are 5. They're not among them. Also said that the similar coverage for the family with one of those carriers, Molina, $1,200. Said they ended up having to divide them up to save money. Wife and daughter were $300 a month, going to $800 with the ACA. Mine was $141 to $550. Looks like I'll be dropping mine to help them pay for theirs. Yeah, I hate to hear that. And that just tells me this is just way too convoluted and complicated. At the end of the day, it is. And that's why I read this little passage from this 148-page monstrosity of a bill, and that's just one of them that they're considering. There's no way all those senators understand all that stuff. No way. And I didn't even get into the complicated stuff. We will cover that some more. We're out of here today, though. Back with you again tomorrow. Stay safe, and God bless everyone.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.